It started with love, or at least, that's what they thought. Across quiet towns in America, hearts opened, trust bloomed, and money began to vanish, millions of dollars, all for a love that never existed. Behind the screen was no soulmate, no charming soldier, no lonely businessman. There was a man thousands of miles away turning affection into cryptocurrency. This is the true story of how one Nigerian tricked Americans out of more than $2.5 million, all in the name of love. Stay with me till the end, because when you hear how he did it and who helped him, you'll never look at an online romance the same way again. Before we dive in, comment below and tell us where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe to Byte Crimes, because your support keeps us bringing chilling, educational true crime stories like this. Now sit back and let's begin the story in full. It began the way so many modern romances do, with a click, a hello, and a promise. Somewhere in Massachusetts, a woman in her late 50s, we'll call her Victim 1, sat alone in her home, recently widowed, days quiet, nights long. One evening, she opened her laptop and joined a dating site. She typed a few hopeful words, looking for companionship. Across the ocean, in Abuja, Nigeria, a man named Charles Uchenna Nwadavid was also logging in. But Charles wasn't looking for love. He was looking for targets. He studied people, what they liked, what they feared, what they needed to hear. He was charming, careful, and almost poetic. He could sound educated, spiritual, even humble. Every word had a purpose, to make people believe in him. Within weeks, Victim 1 felt seen again. He said he was an engineer working overseas, planning to return home soon. He called her his queen. He told her he'd never met anyone like her. The messages turned into calls, the calls into long, intimate conversations, and slowly, affection turned into love. At least, that's what she thought. It started small. It always does. Charles said a business deal had stalled, a shipment stuck, funds frozen. He just needed $2,000 to complete it. He'd pay her back right away. She hesitated, but his voice, soft, steady, reassuring, convinced her. She wired the money. Then came another request, and another, medical bills, customs fees, emergency taxes, each story perfectly timed. Each one is believable, and with every transfer, Charles tightened his emotional grip. But Victim 1 wasn't his only love. She was part of something much bigger, a network of digital romances, each one leading to the same man. Different names, different faces. But one architect, Charles Nwadavid. By the time investigators would discover it, the total loss exceeded $2.5 million. Now here's where the scam turned sophisticated. Charles wasn't collecting wire transfers alone. He was converting them into cryptocurrency, the modern criminal's getaway car. He persuaded Victim 1 not only to send her own money, but also to receive funds from other victims. He told her he was having issues with his accounts overseas, and she was the only one he could trust. She became his money mule without ever knowing it. Large transfers began to flood her account from people she'd never met. Each time, Charles instructed her to deposit the money, then convert it into Bitcoin. He guided her step by step, how to set up a local Bitcoins account, how to make the trades, how to send the crypto. And she obeyed, because she loved him, because she trusted him. Over time, she moved more than 210 Bitcoin, worth millions, into wallets controlled by Charles. Some were in his own name, others in accounts opened using hers. When she asked why he needed so many, he whispered, "For business confidentiality, my love." And she believed him. Years passed, the calls continued, the messages never stopped. "Good morning, my angel. I miss you. Soon we will be together." But doubt began to creep in. Little inconsistencies, details that didn't fit, photos that seemed off. And still, no repayment, no plane tickets, no reunion. When she confided in a friend, that friend's concern turned into action. Together, they contacted the bank, and then the FBI. What investigators uncovered was staggering. Her account wasn't just one victim's, it was a funnel, a digital laundromat, for multiple victims across the country. Each had believed in a different lover. Each had sent money to help that lover. And every payment ended up in the same place. Bitcoin wallets linked to Charles Nwadavid. The FBI realized they weren't dealing with heartbreak. They were staring at a multi-million-dollar fraud network. What do you think drives someone to fall this deep into an online romance? Loneliness? Hope? Manipulation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your insight could help someone spot the warning signs before it's too late. The case began in Massachusetts, but soon stretched across Texas, Florida, California, and beyond. Agents traced every deposit that entered Victim One's account. Each sender had their own story: a sick child, a stranded lover, a lost passport. But the language, tone, and timing were almost identical. Different victims, same script, same destination. Investigators teamed up with crypto forensics experts. Each Bitcoin transaction tracked, analyzed, decoded. Despite Charles's efforts to hide behind mixers and aliases, the digital trail was relentless. And that trail led straight to Charles Uchenna Nwadavid in Nigeria. IP addresses, email accounts, messaging profiles. All roads led to one man, the invisible lover behind countless broken hearts. When the evidence reached the U.S. Attorney's Office in Boston, they moved fast. A grand jury indicted Charles on charges of mail fraud and money laundering, but he was thousands of miles away, untouchable. So investigators waited. They monitored travel records, watched for any sign he might step onto U.S. soil. Then, in early 2025, they got their break. Charles booked a flight from London to Dallas-Fort Worth. He had no idea what was waiting for him on the other side. As he stepped off the plane on April 7, 2025, FBI agents closed in. They called his name. He froze, and the man who had hidden behind countless screens was finally in handcuffs. On his devices, investigators found it all: messages, fake IDs, transaction logs, and crypto wallets loaded with digital fingerprints of the fraud. Every whisper, every lie, every stolen dollar. Charles was extradited to Boston, facing a federal grand jury indictment already waiting for him. Prosecutors called him a manipulator who weaponized emotion. They presented the blockchain evidence: 210 Bitcoin traced directly to his accounts on local Bitcoins. His defense tried to claim ignorance, that he was only a small player, misled by others. But the data didn't lie. In June 2025, Charles Uchenna Nwadavid pleaded guilty. No trial, no jury, just a quiet confession. He admitted to defrauding victims of more than $2.5 million, laundering their money through crypto, and breaking their hearts in the process. For victims, it was bittersweet relief. Justice was finally in motion, but nothing could replace what they'd lost. Some had drained retirement savings, others sold homes, many lost trust forever. Victim one still struggled to accept it. How could someone who said, "I love you" every night be the same person who stole everything she owned? With his guilty plea entered, all that remained was sentencing. The courtroom was set for September 23, 2025. The U.S. Attorney's Office requested more than $2.7 million in restitution. Charles spent the months before sentencing under electronic monitoring in Texas, waiting for the inevitable. Would he spend years behind bars? Would the victims ever see their money again? On the morning of sentencing, the courtroom was packed. Victims filled the benches, clutching photographs and letters. FBI agents lined the back wall, the same ones who had traced his Bitcoin trail across the world. When Charles entered, shackled, dressed in a plain suit, the room fell silent. Everyone waited for justice. But what happened next shocked them all. Not just the victims, not just the agents, Even some of the prosecutors were stunned, because in that courtroom, a final twist would reveal just how deep this deception went. The courtroom held its breath. Every eye locked on the man who had stolen so much. Not just money, but hearts, dreams, and trust. Charles Uchenna Nwadavid stood before the judge, expression calm, too calm. Behind him, the murmurs of victims blended with the low hum of reporters' cameras. The judge began reading the charges aloud: mail fraud, money laundering, aiding and abetting. Each word echoed like a hammer striking stone. Then came the moment everyone had waited for, the sentencing. But before the judge could continue, Charles raised his hand. He wanted to speak. The courtroom tensed. Even the prosecutors looked up, unsure what he was about to say. Charles turned toward the victims. His voice was low, deliberate. "I'm sorry," he began, "but I wasn't the only one." Whispers rippled through the room. He went on to claim that others in Nigeria, people he once called brothers, had recruited him, promising quick wealth through what they called love investments. They had created fake profiles together, split the money, and laundered it through crypto exchanges. He said he was just one piece in a larger machine. The judge listened, face unreadable. The prosecutors exchanged quiet looks. They had suspected others, but until that moment, Charles had refused to talk. His confession didn't clear him. It only deepened the tragedy. Because now, the victims knew there were more like him. More Charleses, more fake lovers are still out there, waiting for new hearts to break. When the judge finally spoke, the room fell silent again. "For years," he said, "you preyed on people's loneliness. You turned love into a weapon, and you did it for greed." He sentenced Charles Uchenna Nwadavid to 2 years in federal prison, followed by 1 year of supervised release, and ordered him to pay $2,724,810.41 in restitution. A heavy sigh rolled through the courtroom, a mix of relief and disbelief. Some victims cried quietly. Others simply stared at him, trying to understand how someone who had once whispered, "I love you," could now stand there in chains. When the hearing ended, marshals led him away. He didn't look back. But the damage he left behind would take years to heal. For victim one, it wasn't just about the money. It was about betrayal. Every word, every message, every promise, now a lie, carved into her memory. She told investigators that even after learning the truth, part of her still missed the voice on the other end of the phone. That's the cruelty of romance fraud. It doesn't just steal your money, it rewires your heart. Over the next few months, agents worked with international authorities to identify Charles's alleged partners in Nigeria. Several names surfaced, but most remained out of reach, protected by distance and digital anonymity. Meanwhile, the U.S. Attorney's Office launched new awareness campaigns, warning Americans about romance scams that use cryptocurrency as the laundering tool of choice. They shared victim one's story, anonymously, hoping it would help others recognize the signs before it was too late. Romance scams aren't new, but what made this case stand out was how technology supercharged the manipulation. By using cryptocurrency, scammers like Charles found a way to move millions in minutes, bypassing traditional banking systems and masking their identities. For investigators, that meant every recovery was a battle against invisible money, funds that could vanish into the blockchain with a single click. And while some see crypto as freedom, for victims like victim one, it became the lock on their prison of heartbreak. Authorities now say romance scams are among the fastest growing forms of online crime in the United States. In 2024 alone, Americans reported losing over $650 million to online lovers who never existed. And those are only the cases people were brave enough to report. To understand why people fall for scams like this, you have to understand loneliness. Scammers don't just sell lies, they sell hope. They study their victims' routines, their grief, their insecurities. They mirror their language, reflect their dreams, and make them feel understood. Then, they introduce urgency, a problem only the victim can solve, a small favor, a test of loyalty disguised as love. By the time the requests turn to money, the emotional bond is already sealed, and even when doubts creep in, shame and hope hold victims hostage. That's why experts say the best weapon against these scams isn't technology, it's awareness and connection. Checking in with loved ones, asking questions, and remembering that love built on secrets and urgency is never love at all. For the FBI agents who worked this case, it was more than just another cybercrime. They described long nights spent untangling digital ledgers, decoding crypto transactions, and tracing virtual wallets across borders. One agent later said, "When we finally arrested him, it wasn't the celebration we felt. It was sad, because we knew how many people he'd hurt before we could stop him." That's the haunting reality of online fraud. By the time justice arrives, the emotional damage has already been done. Still, they persevered, turning code into evidence, heartbreak into justice. Many victims chose to stay anonymous. They feared ridicule, judgment, and being called naive. But one woman said something that stuck with everyone in the courtroom. She told the press, "If I speak, maybe someone else won't fall for the same lie." Her courage became a quiet act of defiance, proof that awareness can grow even out of pain. Victim 1 later joined an online support group for romance scam survivors. She began sharing her story, teaching others how scammers build emotional dependency. Every time she spoke, she reclaimed a piece of herself that Charles had tried to steal. Inside prison, Charles reportedly kept to himself. He read, exercised, and wrote letters that were never mailed. Some say he expressed remorse. Others believe he was simply waiting, planning what to do once he was free again. After his release, he would be deported back to Nigeria. Whether he truly regretted his actions or just regretted getting caught, no one could say. But his name now lives in federal records, a permanent warning etched into the archives of U.S. cybercrime. Charles's story isn't just about deceit, it's a mirror reflecting the vulnerabilities of our digital age. We live in a world where connections form in seconds, where loneliness can meet a stranger's kindness at the tap of a screen, and where trust, once given, can be weaponized by someone halfway across the world. Yet, we also live in a world that can learn, a world that can share these stories, expose these tactics, and protect the next potential victim. So if you're watching this and someone online seems too perfect, too quick, too urgent, stop. Ask questions. Reverse image their photos. Speak to a friend before sending money. And remember, real love never demands proof in dollars. Since Nwadavid's conviction, the FBI and Department of Justice have collaborated with international partners to target similar syndicates. Several suspects connected to his ring are now under investigation. Cybersecurity experts warn that the next generation of scams will use artificial intelligence, deepfake faces, cloned voices, and personalized messages to create even more convincing illusions of love. It's a chilling thought, but also a call to stay vigilant. The more we understand these crimes, the harder it becomes for scammers to thrive. As the final judgment closed, Victim 1 sat quietly at the back of the courtroom. 2 years may not have felt like enough, but it was something. A line drawn in the sand between the person she once was and the survivor she had become. When she walked out of the courthouse, she said only one thing to reporters: "He took my money. He took my trust. But he doesn't get to take my hope." Those words now echo through every awareness campaign built on her story. Because hope, the same emotion scammers exploit, can also be the force that fights back. This story isn't just about one man's deception. It's about the hidden cost of digital loneliness and the resilience of those who refuse to let it define them. Romance scams will keep evolving, but so will we. Because every time you share a story like this, you shine a light where manipulation hides, and that is how we win. If you've stayed with us till the end of this story, thank you. Your attention, your awareness, and your voice make a difference. Please like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe to Byte Crimes. Tell us what you think about this case, and if you've ever spotted the warning signs of a scam like this. Your engagement helps us keep telling real stories that educate, protect, and empower. Until next time, stay safe online, stay sharp, and remember, not every heartbeat behind the screen is human.